Hello and welcome. It is episode number 37, the Hilarious Humanitarians Podcast. I'm Frances Echeverria, licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I am Deanna Silverman, licensed clinical social worker.
And we're coming today at you with stories of the job hunt. Before we jump into that, want to give our disclaimers and our slight begging. We're not above it. Please, if you have not done so already, subscribe and rate our podcast. You can find us on all of the popular podcast platforms. Give us those stars and those ratings, subscribe, and you'll get our weekly podcasts waiting for you every single Friday morning. Also, want to let you know that the Hilarious Humanitarians Podcast is for informational purposes only, does not constitute medical advice, and is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please always seek the advice of a physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a condition. So, Deanna, we are back, and we're back trying to help people get on the right path, get their bearings in terms of searching in today's job market.
Ooh.
So you were telling me when we were doing some planning off the air that you get questions sometimes, especially, those fresh young graduates or people in the graduate program that are looking to get into the mental health field. So we decided that we would kind of travel down that path with them and let them know what they could look forward to and what to avoid like the plague.
Yeah, absolutely. To start though, I want to do something kind of fun. I want to kind of go down a time portal. I want to visit our past. I'm interested to know like what type of jobs you had before you got into like the mental health field, because I don't know about you, but I was not in the mental health field at all. But I feel like there's always transferable skills.
So my very first job was the job I thought I was going to have for my entire life. My dad works in agriculture, and I started, as I mentioned before, I started high school when I was 12. And so the summer between freshman and sophomore year, I could get a work permit. I got my work permit. And that summer, it was the first summer I started working, and I'd worked every summer since then and the rest of the years. Basically working in my dad's office doing entry-level payroll for garlic workers. So I was counting, muddy, dirty time cards and running tape, and got really good at a 9-key calculator. That was my first job. I remember my first raise working for my dad was 10 cents.
Wait, how much was your dad paying you?
A minimum wage. My dad was not fucking around. There was no nepotism in that place.
Yeah. Wait, so you were 12?
13. I had just turned 13. Yeah. So it was legal to work in California. And so I was ready to go that summer, make my money.
I don't know your dad, but I'm going to assume he was probably like maybe even a little bit harder on you than he was to like other people that worked there.
Oh, the women in the office, some of them were just brutal.
Yeah.
Some of the workers have multiple last names, which is normal in Hispanic culture. And you'd have to try and figure out how to alphabetize them based on those last names. And so sometimes if it was like Hernandez Gonzalez, just throwing that one out there, if I, put it under H, but not G, I would get shit. It was the worst.
It was like they were hazing a 13-year-old.
Basically, that's what I felt like.
Oh man.
So that was my first job until I worked for the post office.
Your first job was way more advanced than mine. Like, I think I was 15 years old where I lived. I think you could get a work permit at 15. And I was so sick of asking my parents for allowance money because it was only, I don't want to say only. I'm grateful that I even got anything, but I think I was getting like $10 or $20, I don't know, a month maybe in allowance. And I'm like, this is not cutting it. I need to buy more cassettes. I got CDs I need to buy. So the second I could work, I got a work permit. And so my first job was working at this little hole-in-the-wall chicken rotisserie place. It was like a restaurant. And normally, I feel like to date that the smaller, like hole-in-the-wall place, like the better the food's going to be.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if I walk in and I'm like, I'm a little concerned about my health and the cleanliness of this place.
It's going to be delicious.
It's going to be delicious. Like there needs to be like holes in the seats and like wallpaper. Anyway, so I thought that this place was going to be rad. So I walk in, I have no training. This is literally my first job ever being in the public. Okay. I walk in and the owner, I'm pretty sure he was smoking cigarettes in the kitchen. He like walks out and he's basically like, pick up the phones, take orders, be a hostess, be a bus boy, be a waitress, be everything, be the greeter, be everything. And so I was like, shit, like I was sweating balls. Like it was so uncomfortable. I was like awkward teenager, you know, I'm like, I don't know what to even do. Like he didn't even tell me where the cups were, the napkins were, which I was going to roll with up until his wife also worked there. And he started like berating her, not like out on the floor, but like in the kitchen area, and like was being really mean to her. And I just remember this is like 2 hours into my shift, and I literally told him to fuck off, and I walked out. So I came home. My mom's like, how was your first day? I was like, I quit.
Oh my God.
And she's like, why? And she was about to like give me like a life lesson, you know? And I was like, the fucking asshole was like yelling at his wife. It was so terrible, you know? When I was 15, I didn't know how to approach it other than to tell him to fuck off. And that was it. that was the start of my career.
Well, I
will proudly say that I've never told anyone to fuck off since then.
Okay, you got it out of your system early.
I got it out of my system early, and I felt like it was justified. Like saying fuck off was like the least of what he said to his wife. You know, it was like really uncomfortable. So I hope as well.
There have been times I've certainly thought about that. In fact, we'll get to later some warning signs of that you might be in the wrong place, because I had a session today where the warning signs we decided for somebody was that just the thought of going to work makes you want to cry in anger, and you are completely worried that you might tell someone to fuck off. So those could be warning signs you need to get on the job hunt. Now, if we're talking about like weird jobs before we even got into mental health from working with my dad. Again, I was an ag major. I thought I was going to go to school. I was going to become just somebody working for my dad's company. That was kind of the plan. But that totally changed. I then decided I was going to work for the United States Postal Service, where legit someone shot at the building. So people make jokes about going postal. That actually happened.
Oh my God, that's friggin' scary. What the heck? Did they find out who it was?
It was a disgruntled employee.
What? No.
Yeah, I mean, she just shot at the awning or something, but at that place it was called a rec center, and it was nothing recreational about it, but it paid well. It was hourly, and I left the job working at my parents to go do that. But basically it's when machines can't read handwriting or what's on envelopes. And so you would remote encode it. And it was the most miserable, horrible job ever. I left that to work in radio at like a fraction of the pay. And it was absolutely worth it at the time. So in terms of looking at long-term job satisfaction and movement, sometimes you really do have to take a pay cut or a step down or switch industries when it comes to maintaining your own mental health as a worker, if you will.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm grateful that I have my husband as backup, and we have, when I was working up until 6 months ago, it was like a dual income situation, but I feel like I was officially faced with the whole assessing my job satisfaction and just like quality of life. I just kind of felt like I hit a point in my life where it was like, okay, I just want to kind of venture off and do something a little bit more creative, still on the social work. And obviously we're doing this podcast, and I've been doing some writing and this, that, and the other thing, and like planning some future projects, but it wasn't something I could really focus on unless I quit my job. And I wouldn't take it back. But I can honestly say that I can see, like, once my kid is older and in school, venturing back to the field full time.
Yeah, I think that's what's cool about if we jump forward to the mental health thing, and you do have children, there are opportunities to work in fields that work well with your child's schedule especially once they're school age. I say that though, as a parent who's like, can summer be over? I want to put them back in school year round. They fight too much. I legit had that conversation with my kids today. I picked them up after working the radio station and then seeing clients today. I pick them up and they get in the car and they're just arguing. I said, you know what? I think you guys need to go to school year round because you guys just can't. Can you ever get along? And both of them simultaneously, nope.
It's like the first time they've agreed on something.
It absolutely was. So anyhow.
I'm thinking kind of like in my past jobs, right before I entered the mental health field. I think I've talked about, we must have talked about this in prior episodes, but I went to the Fashion Institute right out of high school and I graduated from there. It was like a trade school, FITM, down in LA, and I did a marketing degree. And I was 17 years old when I started the program. I was 19 when I finished it, which is crazy to me because I look at 19-year-olds now and I'm like, you're a baby. You look like a baby. Even though in my head I'm like, no, they're adults. We need to treat them as such, or blossoming adults. Anyhow, when I graduated from there, I ended up working for Hot Topic corporate as like an allocation analyst is what they call it. And you'd work with buyers. And basically when all the merchandise would hit the warehouse, it was my job to allocate the merchandise to any one of their like a couple hundred stores based on like previous sales. It was totally not the job for me because it was just sitting in front of a computer crunching tiny numbers. The part where like musicians would come into the office every day and that was rad. Mm-hmm. And getting free concert tickets was super rad, but everything else was not. So when I ended up quitting that job and deciding to go start all over again and going back to school, literally I was 22, 23 and I'm like, well, I'm starting all over again. And none of my classes at FITM were transferable. So it was literally all GEs, all my general eds, I had to start from scratch at a community college. So I started studying psychology. And I got down on myself for a long time about that because I was like feeling really bad about the fact that my mom paid for me to go to FITM and I got this degree and now I wasn't using it at all. But Jesus, I feel old saying this because what's 19, like in 4 years, it'll be 20 years since I graduated from FITM.
Oh yeah. So, I'm looking at 20 years next year for high school.
Ew.
Thanks. I'd like to point out I'm only 35, but still that is weird. I'm like 20 years. What 20 the years. Fuck?
I still like drinking Slurpees and like watching Disney movies. I don't feel like an adult. Oh my God. Anyway, okay. Back to the topic. For a long time, I felt guilt about feeling like I wasted my mom's money. And I finally got to a point where I was like, you know what? Any type of education never loses its value. And it has come full circle because there are things about like what I do on social media and other aspects that I have completely taken from the schooling I got almost 20 years ago doing this marketing degree. So there are millions of people out there that have that are currently in a major or a minor who is just like, what am I doing? I'm not even interested in this. And I assure you that most skills are transferable. So just have faith in that.
I feel like these days, actually, it's interesting because in the job search and market, it's almost like the bachelor's degree in whatever is the equivalent of the new high school diploma. But that said, what I've noticed, because working in radio, one of the first things that my boss at the time told me, he said, "What is your major?" And I told him it was speech communication. He said, "Good, because if it's mass communication, that's a terrible idea. You don't get anything but bills for having that degree in terms of, you're not going to come into the radio field and get any more pay based on that." So I say that a bachelor's degree is so important for many jobs and like a requirement. But at the same time, what I'm hearing more and more of is even dedicated ad campaigns they call them the graduates of life. People who have maybe gotten a high school diploma or GED, but have a long work history, people who may have some insecurities wrapped up in not having a formal education. I mean, one of my exes, brilliant, absolutely brilliant programmer, but no, bachelor's degree, master's degree. And I remember talking to him once and saying, do you know what you have because you don't have all the student debt? And he's like, what? I said, well, you have a house and your car is paid for. I know that he faced some insecurities based on the fact that he didn't have a degree per se in his field, but there's something to be said about on-the-job training.
Yeah,
so
completely.
So we tend to come at this from a perspective of higher education and degrees and licensures and things. But if you're listening and you're like, well, I don't want to go back to school and start over, I don't want to get a degree, that doesn't necessarily mean there's not huge opportunities to do something.
Totally. Like when what was it, 2007, I went to Israel on the birthright trip, which is, if anyone doesn't know what, I don't know if they've changed the requirements, but it's like, if you have any kind of Jewish bloodline, you don't have to be religious at all. Like my mom was Jewish, my dad is not, and I was not religious at all. But because I had at least one parent who was Jewish, which by the way, I don't even think you need a parent. You could, I had people on my trip who both parents were like Christian, but a grandmother was Jewish.
Okay.
So if you have any Jewish lines, at least when I was eligible for the trip, 18 to 26 years old, you can go to Israel for free for 10 days. And so I went and I had such an amazing time that I was like, how do I do this again? And they just said to me, well, there is, once again, I've had people reach out to me and be like, do they still do this? I have no idea. I don't work for them at all.
Right.
But at the time, you could go back for free if you recruited 30 people. And I was like, say no more. So I went home and I pounded the pavement, and they didn't ask for me to have a degree. This was just like, if you have the passion and the guts and the tenacity to go after 30 people and have them agree to go on this trip, you can come back. So I was successful. I was able to go back with my brother. It was awesome. Point is, to get 30 people to commit, you have to talk to like 400 people. And it was a moment of me realizing what it feels like to be in sales.
Oh, I could never do it. No way.
And or marketing, but mainly sales, right? I'm basically selling a trip, but it's free, and which is even kind of harder because people thought like, what's the catch? And there really wasn't any catch. So fast forward to today, my husband is a broker and he is in sales. And I kind of joined the family business about a couple months ago. I was kind of working like loosely with him, and now like I've taken more of an active role in both like marketing and sales. And I swear, like I still use the skills that I learned from that recruiting kind of position. I have brought to my activities that I do today. So it's like, we're in sales. So I want to sign 2 people up. Well, that means I'm going to have to contact at least 20, and no degree. Probably. I did not need a degree to learn that.
And marketing. Yeah.
But you better believe that I have that recruiter. And actually, if you recruit people, you can go back as a student leader on that trip to Israel. You better believe I have that on my resume. And I always tell people that, like, if you can't tie down a job, in the meanwhile, do everything you can to like do a volunteer work, or just like an unpaid internship, whatever you need to do. Because if you're not going to do anything anyway, because you can't find work, then you might as well fill your time in a valuable way. So at the very least, you can show that you are being proactive and staying involved when people are interviewing you and asking you, what did you do in the last year?
I get that a lot, especially with working with clients in recovery, where they've taken time off to focus on getting sober, which is incredibly important. And for instance, I've had them where they've gone and just kind of helped with the family business, or, just been kind of an apprentice of sorts. And we've sat down together and talked about, what does that look like on a resume? Okay, what job skills did you manage to develop during this time? And it's been really interesting to see how that builds some self-confidence, and also provides some answers when they do sit down and ask the question, well, why do you have this like break? How did you go from doing all this stuff to now, you're looking for work and you don't really have anything? So I think sometimes it takes this job search and the job hunt some creativity. And I say creativity because I think it's 100% honest, but we have to think outside the box, if you will. It's not lying. It's not manipulating experiences or presenting yourself as something you are not. These are actual experiences where you're gaining knowledge. And I think that that's something that we feel like if we didn't get, a paycheck for such and such pay periods and some sort of title, that it doesn't count.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been a director or a supervisor at certain agencies. And, when looking back, those positions did allow me to have some leeway when I was hiring people, thankfully, because I know there's a ton of places out there that are like, if you don't check every single box, like, does this person have a bachelor's degree? No. Well, then the box is unchecked and then their resume goes in the trash. Like, we know that those things are out there, but there are some places that don't work like that. And I've sat in front of people who are being interviewed who have a resume full of volunteer positions, full of experiences, student leader positions that they had. Maybe they came up with like a support group of their own, or they developed a nonprofit of their own. They're well-spoken. People just didn't give them a chance yet because they didn't have a full-time job under their belt. But like, I remember when I was younger, and I know people feel this way. I can't be the only one where you're going, you tell me I need experience, but so I don't have any experience in a formal way on paper. I'm asking for experience so that you can hire me, but you can't hire me because I don't have experience. It's this like fucking mouse wheel that people get trapped in, and it's no fault of our own. It's just somebody has to take the leap of faith that we're going to rise to the occasion if they like, quote unquote, take a chance on us. So I never strayed away. Like I loved getting those people who are like really hungry for the job. I feel really lame saying that, but their resume showed that they were super proactive and ready to get in there and be a team player, as opposed to like the one person who may have like gotten lucky and had a formal position, but they like sucked as an employee.
I've never been in a supervisory role. And part of that, well, I take that back. I have supervised a couple people, but I just decided from my experience that I didn't want to be in management. I like providing direct services more. And it's not worth it to me in terms of the money and the title in some positions. So I'm also in an interesting situation, and then I have two separate careers. So I jokingly say that I've pieced together like one worthwhile income. But I recognize in looking at my resume that is an area that's missing. And if we're talking about job searches and resume building, my argument to that, and I've never really had to give it in an interview, but my argument to, well, why haven't you moved up at this place or this place in terms of admin is that it was a conscious effort, a conscious choice on my behalf, because I have two very different career capacities. But and for me, if we're going to talk about mental health and your well-being in an employment environment, I just knew that for now, like that's the balance I have. Like I'm going to ride this radio thing as long as possible. I didn't think it was going to be, I think I'm at 17 years now. I thought once I got my master's degree and graduated in, it was 2011, I think that would be the end of my story there. But nope, I'm going to ride that horse till it's dead in the ground.
I think it's awesome that you have those two worlds that collide and live harmoniously
Oh, sometimes it's a sometimes it's a bit of a shuffle and a balancing act, but I do like when they come together. And that's kind of how this whole podcast thing started, was having that background as a we say DJ, but there's not even a CD player. I don't even know how. There's not even a CD player in the studio I'm in. It's all on a computer. I'm not a DJ. That's a lie.
So when people have reached out to me, I'm sure they've reached out to you as well, like on Instagram. People will ask me, I'm in an MSW program. I'm getting my master's in social work. I'm a little worried. I'm graduating soon and I don't have a job lined up yet. And people will ask, which is the reason why we're kind of doing this topic, because it's come up multiple times, like, how do I find work? What do I do? Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to kind of give some real world examples from our lives about like what we did, which might or might not help others out. So just going back to like when I got my bachelor's in child and family life development from San Diego State. Okay. And I knew leaving that getting my bachelor's was like a huge accomplishment, especially because I went back and started all over again. But I also knew that there wasn't going to be a whole lot of money to be made.
Right.
I just had to mentally prepare myself that the pay is going to absolutely suck. I'm going to have to live in a way that like, I wish, I could be living in a nicer apartment, or I wish I could be going out to eat more often. But you're just going to have to suck it up, because this is like resume building time. That's kind of what I like just told myself.
Right. You have to be honest. You're not going to come out of a job making, everybody thinks they come out of, get their degree and they're like, I'm going to go into private practice and make 70, 80, 90. No, you're not. No. Stop. Just stop.
Yeah. No, I think it was $11 an hour. I was a mental health worker, family support specialist for a foster family agency. I worked in foster care. And to date, even though the pay was the worst I've ever had, it was one of my favorite positions I've ever had. And all the staff that I worked with are still my friends to date.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I had the most amazing staff that I worked with. We all became very good friends and we've all stayed in contact, and I think very fondly of each and every one of them, which hasn't been the case with every position, especially as I've like grown up and got my master's degree, right? But even in the capacity of this job, like what I was doing was I was working with a social worker who had her master's, and she's the one that created the treatment plan. And then I took the treatment plan and basically like executed it.
Okay. So you had like a roadmap.
Yeah. So like I had, what we want to say clients, but they're kiddos, they're foster kids. And she would have a treatment plan for each kid that needed to work on like social skills, life skills, behavioral interventions. I would do the interventions. I was doing the thing. She was doing the assessment.
Gotcha.
And even though that was fun for me, I also knew that I wanted to do a little something else. And so during my work, during the time that I was there, I developed during the summertime, like a foster, like it was like a summer camp for all the foster kids at no cost to them. And a couple months before the summer, I just reached out to I was living in San Diego at the time, and so Petco Park is out there, where the baseball team plays. And I just contacted them and I was like, hey, I work as a mental health worker with foster kids, and can you guys do like a tour? Actually, there's so
many free things you can do. Sometimes you just ask around. It's crazy.
Totally. I don't know if they're still on the air, but I think their name was like Mikey and something else. I cannot even remember, but it was a morning show that I was obsessed with. And I reached out to them and I was like, hey, can we do a tour of the radio station and meet all you guys? They were like, yeah, absolutely. Come on down. So I ended up creating like 10 or 12 things that we all did with these kids every single week. It was a 12-week summer camp.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah. And every week we did something different. And till this day, I'm still like, not friends, but some of the foster kids are now in their like mid-20s.
Yeah.
And they have found me through Facebook. And they still talk about that.
I love that.
Yeah, like they never had the means, resources, money, adults in their life who thought about doing something like this, and it just meant so much to them. And nobody told me to do that. That was 100% me sitting there one day going, how can I do more, and how can I be creative to where like it's not coming out of my pocket, because Lord knows at $10, $11 an hour, I can't afford it.
Right.
You know, I mean, I contacted In-N-Out, which is like my favorite, and they ended up sending me like $500 worth of gift cards to go to In-N-Out, you know, and like some of those kids, like, we just take things for granted. You know, I can go to In-N-Out every day if I wanted to. These kids had never even eaten In-N-Out in their life. So we went and had a burger, did stuff like that. So that is something that I have talked about in interviews, probably almost every interview I've ever had. Like when they've asked me a question like, when have you been an out-of-the-box thinker or done something that, you know, you showed initiative, nobody told you to do that? That is seriously one of my go-to responses. And every single time it's been received really, really well. And so I encourage everybody to just, I don't know, to at least consider doing something like that within the capacity of whatever you're doing to add value to your skill set and also your resume.
There are situations where I've seen my radio career and mental health careers kind of collide in similar ways the gym I work out at. And this is where, you know, this is actually a good time to move into like the networking part of, if we're talking about job hunting, because not only is it resume building, but also networking. You never know where you're going to meet cool people. The gym that I work out at in Clovis, California, is a training ground for a lot of professional athletes or soon to be professional athletes, or people that are on, you know, like break for the season. They come back home. A lot of people live in Central California that have made it in different areas. But, you know, you talk to people and you find out their interests in things. And there were some like NFL players who, you know, they had some free time. So they would come and talk to the kids at the gosh, I can't forget what we call it. It wasn't the rec center, but it was something in the county where I worked, where they would just come and tell their story, right? Get some kids interested in the potential to meet like somebody who's playing a professional sport and make a positive impact. And there were things like that. There's lots of opportunities if you're just paying attention, and we're talking about the networking thing, but just to get to know people in your circles outside of your work circles who might know people or have leads or areas where you can develop skills and practice or mentor. And I think that's something important. To use the very cliche statement like we were talking about, like I kind of cringe when I say think outside the box, but it's so true. But it's so easy to get stuck in the I need to check off all the boxes so that I meet the criteria.
Totally.
So if we're talking about job searches and networking,
Actually, you want to hear, sorry to interrupt you. I'll forget it. I got it. I feel like what you just presented is like a really positive, it makes sense. Like that's a networking opportunity for sure, right?
Uh-huh.
I'd like to, okay. So my mom, we talked about, she had cancer. Right. And when I did not like the way she was treated at all. And when she passed away, I was sitting there thinking, damn it, that doctor owes me something, because he really fucked up bad. And I had only met him once in the 8 years that my mom was having treatment. And he worked in and out of the hospital that was in my hometown. So I reached out to him. I called his office while he was like seeing patients. And I just said, hey, I know you work at this hospital and I'm looking to get a job, and you treated my mom. And he like knew her. He knew her. He remembered her.
Why not?
Yeah. And I was like, I'm not trying to get you to just like hand me a job.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to get my foot in the door. So do you know anybody that I can link up with so I can just land an interview? I was confident that if I could land an interview, I could get the job. I just wasn't confident how to get my foot in the door.
Right.
So this was a really fucked up way of getting my foot in the door by
It's
going
genius.
back to the dude that I feel like played a hand in like my mom not surviving this, right? I was like, fuck this, you're getting this job. So he was like, yeah, absolutely. So he hooked me up with the director of case management who was in charge of this hospital. And we had a really nice phone call. She actually took the phone call even though they didn't have any positions open. And at first I thought she was just blowing smoke up my ass and maybe just took the phone call because she had a good relationship with the doctor.
Right.
But I ended up, she was like, I've loved having this discussion with you and you seem so motivated, yada, yada, yada. Unfortunately, we don't have any positions open right now, but we'll be in touch. I literally thought like, yeah, right. Okay, whatever. I tried. And then I ended up getting a job in hospice because I knew I wanted to work in the hospital, but as a social worker, and this goes to anyone out there who's listening who wants to get into medical social work into the hospital, get a job in home health or hospice. I'm sure you've already heard that before. If you haven't, there's the golden ticket. So I went and got some experience in hospice, and 1 year, literally like to the date of having that call, I got a phone call from the manager of the social workers at that hospital who was like, hey, a year ago you had a phone call with so-and-so and she referred me to you and we'd love to interview you like tomorrow. And they offered me the job like the day after the interview. And that's how I ended up in hospital medical social work for the past 5 years.
It's so funny. So I still see the same therapist who I went to when my kid's dad and I went to marriage therapy. Okay. Like I got to keep her in the divorce. I've also kept her through another divorce. And she knows my life, right? Yeah. And just to clarify, it's not some weird codependent long-term thing. When you work in mental health, you should probably have a therapist. I'm just saying, otherwise you will drive yourself crazy. But she had recommended to me sending in my resume to somebody. I followed up. I sent my resume in, never really heard back. It was 15 months later, as I was getting on the plane to go to Iceland following my mom's death, that this place called me back. And that place is the place I'm working at now. So
that's awesome. See?
15 months later, you give up. And actually looking back at it, I'm so glad they didn't call me at the time when I sent my resume because I wasn't ready. I went and worked. I mean, looking back now, I wasn't ready. I went and worked in a recovery center and really, I think, developed a lot of skills that were useful.
Totally.
Leading groups and things. And so it all worked out. But I guess it's just kind of funny, the networking thing, because that was legit my therapist saying, hey, I heard about this.
Yeah.
And so I think as people trying to help other people in general, I think people that listen to our podcast are probably trying to do that, just trying to put some good vibes out into the world. Pay attention to where help wanted signs are, who's having the conversation that they need good employees, and, keeping an eye out, because I think it helps to all, keep an eye out for one another. You never know when that connection or networking is going to happen.
I completely agree with you. Like at the time when I was like, this guy just needs to get me the interview so I could get the job pronto because I just graduated, right. I was one of those like, oh my God, like I graduated from getting my master's degree and it was like off to the races. Like I needed a job now. Like I had friends who wanted to wait a couple months and give themselves a mental break. I was like, no. Like I took that phone call probably. I actually took the phone call before I even graduated because I remember getting the phone call for the interview for hospice as I was walking out to graduate. Like I was just, oh my God, I was literally just on fire for work, like let's pay back these student loans.
Right.
But I completely agree with you because if the hospital would have taken me at that time, I think I would have crashed and burned and maybe potentially been fired because I just wasn't ready yet. There was so much to know, medical terminology to know. I mean, just that, like as a foundation, medical terminology. You never practice, hear me loud and clear. You never ever practice Don't pretend like you're a nurse. You're not a doctor. You're a medical social worker. Always practice within your scope. However, there are things, if you're working as a medical social worker, you're reading through medical notes all day long. Pretty much the only thing you're reading through is doctor's notes and nurses' notes. And I would have not known how to navigate that had I not worked in hospice first. Not to mention, like, I'm going to be real here. I was really afraid of seeing somebody die or a dead body. I didn't know how I was going to be able to handle that. And so going into hospice, I had never seen anybody die. I had never seen a dead body. I just was so fearful of what my response was going to be. And I'll just say that, like, even though I only saw, it was weird. Like, I worked in hospice for a year, but I only saw 2 people pass away. It was enough to give me the confidence to at least know I wasn't going to have a meltdown.
Right.
You know, like I entered hospital social work. I always remember the first person that I saw in the hospital die. He died. It was this older man. And his grown son, who was like 50 years old, climbed into the bed with his dad, who had passed away, and got into the bed under the blankets with his dad, who was deceased, and just sat there, like, stroking the man's head and, like, hugging and kissing. And like, I don't know how, like, I just stood there and had this conversation with this man, and I don't know if it's my personality or what, but, like, it didn't come off to me as awkward, weird, anything. Like, it just is what it was. I was there to hold this man, not physically, but I was just there.
Hold his space.
Right, exactly. Hold the space and be supportive of him and not judgmental, and just be there for him and not get in the way with my own awkwardness, or, like, I don't know what to say or do, or now I'm talking too much because I'm nervous. I was able to hold this space because I worked in hospice. I mean, there are going to be some things, especially if anyone's listening who wants to get into medical social work, and more specifically, like the ER, that's where I was. Actually, I was everywhere. I was the only, oh my God, this was a friggin' nightmare. But I worked at a hospital that had 250 beds, which is a pretty big hospital. And they had an ICU, a DOU, which is a step down from ICU. They had med surg 1 through 5, and an ER, and a psych unit, and a NICU.
Okay, so they had a few things.
They had a few things. And I was the only evening to nighttime social worker. My entire department went home at 4:30, and I started my shift at 3. I worked from 3 to, I think it was like 11:30 at night. So I had the entire hospital to deal with, plus I was stationed in the ER. There were things that I could have never prepared myself to see, ever, in my wildest imagination. But once again, the experience I had with death and dying in hospice prepared me for everything that I faced, for the most part, in the ER. Because I don't know how much more personal and potentially scary, or maybe even awkward, it can get when facing death and facing people's reactions to death,
right?
Their coping, everything, all the above.
So Deanna, I think going from that, because you talked about the experience of dealing with death, and also just the experience of working in an ER overnights, which I know, for instance, like I'm not cut out for that. I think a good place to go from that in this conversation is to maybe recognize, like, if you're listening and you're going, maybe I need to think of a change. We've mentioned this several times before, that the best time to look for a job is when you have a job.
Yes, that's the best time.
To start making plans. I mentioned this earlier, warning signs that perhaps you need to start thinking about a change in your employment situation. And so maybe if you're listening, you're like, this is good. I can make this work, or, work's going to suck anyways. I might as well just, put in my, however many years you work before you retire, and count down to then. I think, though, that there are some potential warning signs that we should probably pay attention to if we are unhappy in our current place, whether that's working in mental health or just in general. And I know, looking back at my situation, when I would get off, I talked about working in the postal service. When I would get off work, I would immediately start dreading when I would have to come back.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't have weekends off, but like if you find yourself in a situation where you're getting off work and you're already, like, instead of looking forward to the things you're going to do, you're just dreading the time that you have to clock back in, that's probably a pretty good warning sign that that's not good for you.
Yeah. Agreed. Another
one is the emotional reactivity, and just in general. I mentioned this earlier, where I think my client I was talking to she's probably not the type that's ever got off on anybody. But if you're constantly picturing having a scene from Office Space where you're just smashing stuff, or you're literally afraid of opening your mouth because you might tell your office manager to take a long walk off a short pier, it may be a good time to think about a job search.
Just think, yeah. I mean, you don't necessarily have to, quit. Okay. You got bills to pay. We know this, but create a LinkedIn account. I've actually had a lot of good luck with LinkedIn personally. I actually had the most luck when I quit my job, my most recent job. And even though I'm not ready to take any of the potential offers for interview out there, I've been contacted by a bunch of recruiters who have like really interesting positions. But once again, I'm not ready to go full time again. So what I've done is I've actively written back to every single one of them, and I've been really, really friendly and just said, like, right now, and just honest, like, right now I'm not ready to go full time, but this position sounds incredible. If I have anybody that I can refer to you, I will absolutely do that. And if anything changes, I will be reaching out to you.
Right. So it extends like a friendly handshake, if you will, because that's the other thing. You don't want to burn bridges.
Right. Exactly. That's a huge one. Don't burn a bridge. And burning a bridge, you never know how sensitive people can get. Even not responding could potentially burn a bridge. So It's really not that hard to just write back and say, thank you for reaching out. No, thank you. At this time, I can't commit to anything like that. But position sounds interesting. I'll keep it in mind.
So LinkedIn is a solid one. I'll be honest. I have a LinkedIn account. I don't use it very much. I feel like I've got enough social media things. But I know that other potential areas to kind of just get in and look around. I mean, one of my jobs I found on Craigslist, that was for a legitimate job working as a social worker, not in the capacity that you do clinically, but at a foster family agency. And that was up on Craigslist. There's also opportunities if you're in the field now to ask around politely. If you're in school, professors, supervisors, they'll know where, sometimes they know where not to go.
Right.
To be the agencies you definitely don't want to work for. And oh gosh, I remember this potential I gotta be real careful with the details I'm going to share, because Fresno is, although a big city, it's a small city. But I interviewed at a place and I was like, this could be really good, right? It was right after I got my license. And I was thinking, oh, this is great. Went there. It was a cool looking spot. Seemed like there was a dog. There was a therapy dog. I was sold, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I did a little more work, and I had gotten like a call back. I did a little more work, and the person that was running it had some serious red flags, because you can pull someone's professional license. And there were some serious red flags. So what I realized was happening was this person was looking to hire someone with a clean license.
Ooh, God,
right?
That's scary.
And so, yes. And I just remember being completely sidetracked because I was a little googly-eyed over it. I thought, this is great. This is an area I want to go into. This could be really potentially successful. And a friend of mine just said, why don't you look up that person's number on BBS in the state of California? We're registered with the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and you can see if there are complaints, if there are violations, if people's licenses are even in good standing or exist. And it was just a shit show of stuff. And I went, okay, but I was nice. I didn't say, dude, I looked you up and you were a train wreck. I was like,
Right.
it's just not going to work right now.
That's actually a really, really good tip, because I know that back in the day, you know, you're so eager to start paying your bills and getting a job that I'm pretty good with detecting red flags when it comes to dating, but I'm not as good with detecting red flags with jobs.
Okay.
Because I feel like I'm somehow protected or something within like HR and whatnot. And you just come to find out, no, that's not the case. Like, you need to stay vigilant and aware of red flags no matter where you go. So that's actually a really great tip. I've never used that one, but I'll be using that in the future if I ever.
And that works with anybody, even if you're not in a licensed field, just to kind of look at, you know, I don't know if this is a larger scale agency, but like Better Business Bureau, you know, things like that. Look up where it is that you're going, not just to know like, oh, I'm interviewing with so-and-so, I should know what their background is, but to know what their general vibe is or feel in the community, or even orientation towards certain social aspects. I started to kindly walk away from a conversation once where I was like, if I don't leave, I'm going to tell this person they are a absolute ignorant, just bigot.
Mm-hmm.
I need to back away now, kindly get the hell on out of there. So as we bring this up, you know, to be careful to network, to look around in places that are more non-traditional could be really useful. So hopefully, and again, whether you're currently getting into a new job or kind of thinking or looking around, sometimes just knowing, sometimes something as simple as just updating your resume with your most current skill set can make you feel empowered and that you have choices.
Yeah.
So I want to say that as we wrap up. So as we're wrapping up today, we have a few feel-good stories that we would like to share, feel-good news. And then we'll do a quick check-in with self-care and some listener shout-outs. You got a couple feel-good news stories here.
Yeah. Okay. So there is a woman that her name is Georgia Duffy, and she took to social media earlier this week. I guess she quit her job and opened like an independent bookstore.
Uh-huh.
And I guess she had like a really bad day with sales, like less than $20 of sales, right? So she went to Twitter and just said like she was feeling a little discouraged. And then the internet just popped on in and supported her. And I guess donations poured in. And I guess her average sale was like 12 books a day. And she ended up selling like over 70 books. And I know that there's a lot more like bigger stories out there, but sometimes I think it's important for us to like highlight the littler stories, because I can't imagine what it would feel like to be this woman who was like down on herself. She just quit her job. She opened up this new business. It's scary, you
Absolutely.
know, and then getting the support of total strangers on the internet. Like, I don't know. It just really made me feel good.
That's fantastic.
Having a moment of like, you know, restorative faith in humanity. And then also, this is not really good news. I'm just being silly.
Well, I think it depends on who you ask.
I found a Kickstarter. I love Kickstarter. You know that
I've
website?
never really looked at it. I've heard about it and seen some things that started as Kickstarters.
I love it. By the way, we're not affiliated. This is not an ad or anything. This is just me being an internet nerd. I love Kickstarter because you can find just the coolest stuff. I love supporting like mom and pop places. I love supporting independent business owners. Like, that's my jam for sure. And I was on there like, who am I going to support this month? And you can find really cool birthday gifts and stuff for people. And there's a Kickstarter right now where it's like overalls made of sweatpant material. I'm like, excuse me, can I please put in an order for like 700 pairs? Like, I'm a little scared to back this Kickstarter because I know if I get a pair, I'm never going to wear anything else. It's just, I heard that if you want to try to lose weight, you should not be wearing sweatpants all day long because it's like you can't hold yourself accountable. You can't feel yourself getting bigger.
Oh, that was one of the things I hated about the one job I worked at the recovery center. For some reason, we couldn't wear jeans, but we could wear leggings. Do you know, first of all, leggings show a whole lot more of what I got going on than jeans.
Yeah, right?
But one of the deals was that it didn't hold me accountable. I swear I gained weight because of those stupid leggings.
Oh my God. No, I'm not friggin' like, it's been bad. Since I quit my job, I've been in nothing but leggings and sweatpants and pajama pants. And I have gained like a solid 15 pounds.
Can I ask a question I've been wondering about the whole time I see you on this video?
Yeah.
Is your shirt inside out?
Yes. Wait. Yes. I was going to say, is it inside out and backwards? Because I've done that before too. I'm not wearing a bra. And I'm in sweatpants. That's my life.
Deanna, you need to invest in sweatpants overalls. I think that's a solid retirement move in independent occupational, whatever you call it, self-employed.
You know what? I have to. Also, can we just talk about real quick the explosion of mini hands?
The tiny hands, yes.
Okay, we need to go back a few episodes to find out when I started talking about that, because I swear I do not remember tiny hands being a thing. I'm not saying it's because I said anything on this podcast, but I think I did say something stupid and lame, like, I don't know, I have like a feeling sometimes of trends.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure I talked about that on that episode.
I'm pretty sure you did, yeah.
And I introduced my love of tiny hands and tiny feet, little plastic tiny hands and tiny feet, and fanny packs. And I have seen fucking fanny packs and tiny hands everywhere now.
Dude, they had fanny packs at my kids' recital yesterday.
Everywhere. What the fuck is that? Seriously, I'm getting so pissed. Like, I'm missing out on life. Like, I'm missing out. I need to... If anybody out there is like a graphic designer and you want to just for free create a shirt that has to do with this podcast and tiny hands, let's team up together. Okay, Francis, do you see the link that I just sent you on our chat?
It's all fancy. Let's see. Oh, it's the overalls.
Yeah, look.
They're called swoveralls.
Yeah, but look at them.
Oh, God. I can't even with these right now.
No, they're so good.
Overalls. I could see so many dudes I know wearing these.
Oh, they're so comfy looking.
Oh, God. I don't know what to do. Functional inside front pocket for all of your stuff.
Oh, God. Pockets and sweatpant material overalls. Sign me up.
I don't know what to do with this. You can dress them up or you can dress them down. Okay, so as we're wrapping up really quick, I do want to give one listener a shout out, and then I'm going to do the self-care update. But this one came in from Jocelyn online, and she just said, "Hi, I'm obsessed with your podcast. As a midwife, I wish I had more counseling training, and I learned so much from what you have to say." So I thought that was pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And so what's your self-care been like?
Self-care was actually getting out of town. We have not done that in a while. And my husband and I decided, like, I don't care if it is like camping in our backyard. Like, I need to get out of town. My husband was like, yeah, we should do this every 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm like, hold on, wait a second. Because it does take money to go out of town. But we have a cabin up in Big Bear. And we hadn't been for like 8 months.
Uh-huh.
So Big Bear. And then I also hate the heat. I don't like hot weather at all. But we decided to go to Joshua Tree after Big Bear, which was totally different than we ever done before. And it was just so nice. It was just me, my husband, my kid. I got an Airbnb with one of those like stock tank pools.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like on the cliff of a mountain overlooking the desert, and the sunsets are beautiful out. It was just really, really like rejuvenating. I've had a hard time. Like when we came home, I was like,
adjusting.
Yeah. Like we came home on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember when it was, but it just felt like here we are Thursday and I just can't get into the groove. I'm like, can we just start work on Monday? Can we just like call it a wash? But didn't you hiked Mount Whitney?
I did.
That has to be your self-care, please.
It was in a lot of ways. And, I think it'd be interesting someday to do a podcast on like really pushing yourself to physical limits, because I think it tells us a lot about it. I mean, so much of it sucked, to be really honest. And at several points I was just like, this is life. Life can suck sometimes. But yeah, my self-care was marking that off of my bucket list. It took 16 hours altogether.
How high up is it?
It's 14,505 feet, and you start at about 6,661 feet. And so Fresno is maybe a couple hundred feet above sea level. So I think I got some altitude sickness at one point. I was pretty sick to my stomach, but and the only way I can explain this is I think I'm pretty physically fit, but the last 4 miles took 4 hours. So that's how hard and just scary.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Because like when we go up to Big Bear, it's 7,000 miles or 7,000 feet.
7,000 feet. Yeah. Double that.
And like, yeah, I'm like walking with my daughter and pushing her stroller. And I'm like, I can't, like the air is just like, I can't breathe. And so like, I think I actually saw a picture of you holding up a sign that said 14,000 something and going, okay, that's 2 times Big Bear. And she was hiking. Like, how did you do that? It
was an adventure, I'll say. And it was definitely an interesting dynamic in that usually I'm the one that's pretty like good to go. And in this case, the person that I hiked with, adrenaline training, whatever, much longer legs. He was having to like wait up for me and push me along. So it was great. That is definitely something I'm not going to forget.
Did you have any moments where you're like, no, I'm done, I can't go?
No, I can honestly say no point in this whole thing did I say I was going to stop, which I've learned that about myself from doing other things. So that was pretty cool. But I mean, there were some just hard parts, but I think it's a great, I always mess this up, analogy or metaphor for life, that what are you going to do? Stop?
Right.
I wasn't going to turn around. I mean, I know some people had to turn around because they were sick, but
you've gone that far. Like you just have to keep going.
It just was a test to, I guess I felt like pretty proud of that thought didn't cross my mind. And then also we've talked about body image issues and stuff. And so for me to just be thankful that my body with all of its imperfections and things could haul my ass up a mountain. But we should do a podcast on the goals thing, just so I can talk about coming within 1.5 feet of a bear when you're asleep in a truck. And then also, Deanna, that happened. A bat flying out of the bathroom, out of the toilet when I went to use it at 2 a.m.
No.
So we'll leave with that. We'll have to come back to that story later. But your new website is up. Where can we find you?
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm having flashbacks of Jim Carrey when nature calls her. He's like, bat? You didn't say anything about a bat.
It
like
literally flew.
Are fair game, but no bats.
It flew out of the toilet. I'm not even kidding.
Yes.
So where can we find you online?
Well, if you're interested after all this, you can find me at hilarioushumanitarian.com. My website is up. Still working on some blog entries that I'll have up pretty soon here. Still going strong with Instagram, Hilarious Humanitarian. If you want to check out pictures of my daughter, sounds kind of weird, but my life
super cute.
As a mom, that's Humanitarian Mom. Our shared account for this podcast show is H Humanitarians Podcast, and we can find Frances at Shut Up Skippy on both Snapchat and Instagram, as well as your website is up now, right?
Yeah, shutupskippy.com. Yeah. So I'm really excited about my first guest blogger who finds herself an accidental virgin in her 30s.
Accidental virgin?
Yep.
Okay, I'm ready.
That's my teaser. That's my teaser right there. See what I just did? Shutupskippy.com. All right. We will be back next week. Please rate and subscribe. Find us. Tell your friends. This has been the Hilarious Humanitarians Podcast. Bye.
Bye, guys.